Hi there guys, my name is Jacob and welcome to my channel. Now, in my opinion, the future of the UK state pension has never been in more doubt, and you might be sat there thinking, why do I think that? Well, I think that for a number of reasons. You've got the government saying that they've got a huge black hole in the public finances that they are going to be looking to fill. And I think they may be looking to fill that by changes to the way our pension is divvied out. There is rumours that they are thinking of changing the state pension to a means-tested pension. So potentially that might mean fewer people actually receive the state pension. You've also got in the future changes to the age in which you are able to get the state pension, which I believe it's about 66 now and it's going up to 67, or I might be wrong there, it might be 67 going up to 68. But in the future, that is going to continue to rise. And the reason for that is, again, it comes back to the public finances. The cost to which pensions add to public finances is increasing as the years go on. And that is for a number of reasons. Maybe people getting older, but also that pensions are going up with the cost of inflation. And the government recently just confirmed that they are committed to keeping that going. So the cost to the public finances in terms of the state pension is only set to rise. So for me, all of this makes a private pension even more important, probably the most important it's ever been. And the reason for that is, in my opinion, when I get to state pension age, and I'm 31 now, I'm not convinced that I will, one, have access to the state pension, or two, that it will even be around, because we're talking, nearly 40 years from now. I'm just not convinced that the state pension will be there then. And if it is, it probably won't look anything like it looks now. So for me, I'm kind of putting all my eggs in the private pension basket. Now, that's not to say that I don't do other things outside of this, like invest in stocks and shares. I've got a house that I'm looking to get paid off, and, personal savings, things like that. But when it comes to saving into my private pension, I take it deadly serious. So I'm going to give you today the number that I have in my private pension right now. And I did this video exactly a year ago. And I shared with you then what I had in my private pension a year ago, the exact figure. So today is an update on that video, and I'm going to share with you how much it is increased in exactly 12 months. But before we get into my numbers, I'm just going to share some average numbers, just to give some context of what my pension number actually means in the grand scheme of things. And I got these numbers from a pension provider called PensionBee. So the average pension pot in the UK right now is apparently £20,100. Now that is just the average of all pension pots. So regardless of age, apparently it is just £20,000, which to me was a shocking number. And the reason why it's shocking is because it's so low. If you were to go into retirement with just £20,000, I can tell you that number is not going to get you anywhere near the level of retirement that you may be hoping for. So that is why that number shocked me when I saw it. But it's a little different if we look at it specifically by age. And then I think you'll realise why that number's so low. It is because it takes into account so many young people who haven't had the chance to save yet. But if we go into averages by age, it makes more sense. So 16 to 24, the average pension pot value is just £2,500. And that kind of makes sense because they've probably only just started a job and saved very little. From 25 to 34, it goes up to 9,300. So a little bit higher, but let's be honest, not that much. 35 to 44, there's quite a big jump to £30,600. 45 to 54, another big jump, up to 75,000. That's the average pension pot of that age. And then the average of 55 to 64 is 107,000. So by the time the average person makes it to the age of 64, or more or less thereabouts, we are talking they have a pension pot of around £107,000. Now that may seem like a lot of money to have in a pension pot, but in the grand scheme of things, it really isn't. And the reason for that is PensionBee state that a pension pot worth just £100,000 will provide the user with only £4,000 to £5,000 of income per year. So if you've got a pension pot of £100,000, and let's say the average is 107,000, so that is quite likely for most people, then that pension pot is only going to net you around £5,000 per year in income, which, let's be honest, is nowhere near what you require to live a comfortable life. Now, I guess if you factor in the state pension, which is currently 11,500, well, if you factor in that plus a £5,000 income, then you get up to 16,500, which I guess seems a little bit better and certainly more livable, especially if you've got no debt, your mortgage is paid off, things like that. But let's be honest, £16,500 is still very little money to live on. Bear in mind that the minimum wage in this country is around £22,000. So if you manage to be the average person with 100,000 in your pension and qualify for the UK state pension, you're still going to be earning far less than the minimum wage. That is quite crazy if you ask me. And factoring the personal allowance for income is currently set at around 12,500. So if you were earning 16,500, that's also going to be taxed as well. So you're not even going to see 16,500. You're going to see, well, a couple of thousand less than that, most likely. So you're now talking somewhere around 14,000 as like your take-home pay, substantially less than the minimum wage. So I don't know about you, but I find all that quite shocking. And it tells me that as an individual, and hopefully you watching this video, we need to be aiming to be a lot better than the average. That is without a doubt. If you want a comfortable retirement, and Pension B state that you need to be aiming for an income, a retirement income of around 30 to 35,000 to be classed as having a comfortable retirement. So quite clearly, the average person who's on the UK state pension plus an average private pension of 16.5 is absolutely nowhere near what they class as a comfortable retirement. Now, let's get into what I've got in my pension pot, and this provides a little bit more clarity as to where my head is at in all of this. So if you saw the video last year that I did, and I'll be honest, not many people did because the channel was incredibly small back then, but I shared with you that at the time of August 2023, I had in my pension pot £51,798. And that was as of the 1st of August 2023. Now, if you think about that, £51,000 is in my pension pot. Now, that puts me in between the brackets of 35 to 44 and 45 to 54. But I'm only 31 at the moment. So clearly, from what these numbers show, I'm actually performing better than average when it comes to saving into my private pension. Now, for context, I currently contribute £716 a month into my private pension. That is not all from me. That is split 50-50 between myself and my employer. Now, I currently do 10% of my current salary into my private pension, and my employer matches that. And that total of 20% comes to £716 per month. And that is what I've been putting into my pension for quite a while now. When I first started with them, which was about 13 years ago, I did 5% and they matched 5% because that was what the company policy max pension contribution was at the time. But since then, they've raised that to 10%. So as soon as I got that comms through to say they were raising it, I increased my contribution to 10%. So that means I went straight from an overall contribution of 10%, 5 and 5, all the way up to 20%, where I do 10 and they do 10. And I'm well aware that I am incredibly lucky to be able to have a pension match scheme like that. But surprisingly, you'd be amazed how many people I work with, and this is the majority of people, who do not take advantage of that pension match scheme. And honestly, it blows my mind. But most people only do the bare minimum, which is 5%, and the company matches 5%, so 10%. But that's quite literally half of what I'm doing. And I don't know why. I mean, I've done it from as far along as I can remember. And the reason why I did that is because at the time I was in a position where I had the spare money to be able to let it go to the pension and not worry about it. But as time's gone on, my bills have got increasingly higher every year, as they do. You know, I've got a bigger mortgage now, lots of other bills to pay. But the reason why I believe I can afford it is because I was used to doing those payments before I got all these bills. So I've kind of just learnt to live with that money going out of my salary every month. Whereas I guess if I had to do it now, it would probably be a bit more of a shock to the system because I'm not used to it. But I'm used to living on the lower amount of money that I get every month because I've committed to doing this pension from almost as soon as I joined the company. So that does make it a lot easier for me. But as I said, last year I had a pension pot of £51,798. Now, exactly 12 months later, my pension pot is worth £69,906. So that is nearly an £18,000 increase in my private pension. But when you think about it, I've only actually contributed around £4,000 in that 12-month period because I do 10%, which is around 4,300 of my pay. My company does the other 10%, and then the rest of that is capital growth in my pension pot. And that is because it's invested in stocks. And obviously stocks can go up and down. They don't always go up. But over the last 12-month period, they have gone up considerably. So even though I've only contributed £4,000 myself, the actual pension pot has increased £18,000, which, if you ask me, is an incredible return from just a 12-month period. So what does all this mean for my own retirement, and what could I potentially get out of this pension pot when I get to retirement age? Well, luckily, my pension provider, which is Fidelity UK, they actually provide some interesting tools on their website when you log into your pension account. And they actually give you some pretty strong predictions of what you could expect if you carry on the contributions that you're currently doing. So I'm going to go over that with you now. And I found these quite interesting. So it basically said, at the age of 55, which currently is the earliest I can access this private pension, I believe this is going up to 57 in the coming years. So this won't actually apply to me. But right now, private pension age is 55, I believe. And Fidelity said if I was to access my pension at 55, then I would potentially have a balance of worst case scenario, 319,000, and best case scenario, 500,000. That is what my pension pot would be worth. And again, in a worst case scenario, that pension pot would give me £18,000 of annual income as worst case, or best case, 28,000. So even in a worst case scenario, if I had this pension at 55, there's a chance I would be quite close to that comfortable retirement level, where Pension Bee said it was between 30 and 35. But obviously my pension would have to perform more or less in the best case scenario for me to be closer to that. But if we go a little bit older, if I was to access this pension at 60 years old, which is probably more likely, then my pension pot would be worth, worst case scenario, 406,000, and best case scenario, 663,000. That would net me 26,000 of annual income in the worst case scenario, and £43,000 of annual income in the best case scenario. So now we're well into that comfortable retirement if it performed best case scenario. If we go a little older, which we're getting much closer now to the proper retirement age of 65, at 65, worst case scenario, it thinks I will have 504,000 in my pension, and best case scenario, 861,000. At 65, I would have worst case, £34,000. So then we are inside that comfortable retirement level, even at worst case, and best case, £58,000 of annual income, which that would just be ridiculous because that's even more than I'm paid now. But if I carried on working to 65, that is what it says I would have. And if for some crazy reason I carried on working to age 70, then it said I would have 649,000 at worst case, and best case 1.1 million, which blew my mind when I saw that. Well, that would net me at 70 years old £60,000 of annual income, or £97,000 of annual income as the worst and best case. Now, both of those numbers are, to me, insane numbers, especially for a retirement income. I don't get paid anywhere near that now, so God knows why I would need that much in retirement. Now, going back to the numbers that we spoke about, my aim for my private pension is to access it at more or less the 55 range, or if it's 57 when I get there, so be it. Whatever the earliest age I can access the private pension is my goal, because I don't want to work to the required state pension age, and also because I don't actually believe the state pension will be there when I get there. So I am solely reliant in my mind on the private pension. So I'm comfortable that, and this is a lot of variables, but if I was to stay in my current role, on my current salary, with my current contributions, and nothing changed, that the path I'm on right now, I'm quite happy with those numbers to say that I will have a comfortable retirement. If everything pans out and the stock market pans out and all that type of stuff, which, like I said, there's a lot of variables. It may not work that way. But even in the worst case scenarios that Fidelity said, I would be pretty happy with those numbers. But I think it just shows you, though, that you've got to have a heck of a lot of money in your private pension for it to be giving you the annual income that you want to receive. And, you know, when I go back to the worst case scenario at 55, it said I would have £18,000. Now, if there is a state pension, then fantastic, because the state pension would then bump me up to probably over 30,000. But if there isn't a state pension, then I would have to learn to live off £18,000. Not a great deal amount of money. But if we look at what I said before was the current average, where most people are looking at a state pension of just 16,500. Well, hopefully my private pension will give me more than that, even at the earliest date. So that does give me a lot of confidence that I am on the right path. But like I said, a lot of things have to stay the same and go well for that to happen. Now, I don't know what you guys think about that. Let me know in the comments down below whether you think, you know, what you think of my current scenario and whether I'm doing the right thing or the wrong thing. And also let me know kind of what scenario you're in at the moment. If you're willing to share what your current pension pot is worth, then pop it down in the comments, and I'd be really interested to kind of know where I stand with the rest of you guys. And I'll leave it there, guys, because this was a long video already. But if you enjoyed this video, hit the like, hit the subscribe, and I just want to thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Guys, I will catch you in the next one.